Hello, everyone. My name is Paula Driver-Shimada, and I'm here today to deliver a training from the Campus Shared Services Center. I work in the Campus Shared Services Center Information Technology Unit, and I'm here to talk about knowledge management. And just in case, I know there are a lot of IT people in the crowd, we are not going to talk about anything to do with technology in this presentation, okay? So I'm going to put that out there right from the front. We are going to talk about concepts around knowledge management and things that you should consider when you're thinking about building a knowledge base articles, and knowledge management. Okay. A bit about myself. I come from the UC Davis campus, where I worked for 23 years. The bulk of my service was as a human resources person, and so you'll see shades of human resources amongst the delivery and the topics that we cover today. And I worked at the Student Health Center on the campus, UC Davis Extension, and my last several years were at the Division of Human Resources. And the last 6 years, I was basically bounced around and deployed and redeployed to various projects, the last one being the Campus Shared Services Center. At the Davis campus, they actually call it the Shared Services Center, so I always have a trouble with my, bringing things back and forth. Okay. We aren't talking about the technology today, and I think that's a very nice way to approach knowledge management, both from an organizational standpoint of organizing your knowledge, the knowledge that you have now and as you build knowledge, but also because we are in the process of making decisions. So we have to do due diligence, and this is a very clean way to start. You'll hear me mention a system twice through the presentation, but it's just to kind of elaborate, I guess, or introduce what I do know about one particular system. But other than that, like I say, we're not going to be talking about an IT thing. The way I roll when I teach is that, or train, is that if you have a question at the time, of course, you raise your hand, and Ben here is going to have the mic and take it over to you. We'll all be able to hear your question, and I'll provide a response, hopefully. I'm able to provide a response. Okay? Okay, so we're going to move to the outline, which, again, I train, so another way to look at outline, things that are included in this outline are objectives. So after this training, each of these things will be covered, and you should be able to address, and you have handouts?
Actually, I didn't bring handouts. I will print them out.
Okay, Ben will print out handouts after the training, and these are available online, so Ben will take care of that as well. So aren't we lucky Ben's here? Okay, so each of these areas will be discussed or covered. And the first thing, I think it's always good to figure out where are we coming from. And so for us, we wanted to address why even is there a Shared Services Center. So what I did was read through about 15 pages of the Shared Services Center web pages, and I culled out these pieces of information. And when I list all these, we're not going to go through each one, but I'll just kind of highlight a few things. And the word I would like to highlight on this slide is the word reliable. Okay, when I hear the word reliable, I think of consistency or being consistent. And a knowledge management and having a knowledge base is a way of providing consistent information in certain categories of information and knowledge to a lot of different people. Okay, and providing that, again, information consistently so people can rely on it. It's reliable. One thing I'd ask as we go through, when we think of our service, and I know that one big change that's happening on the Berkeley campus is there is CSSIT, but there's also our colleagues at ISNT, and I believe that's pronounced, okay? And ultimately, one day, we want to be viewed as one IT. So as you go through this knowledge training, think about what that might look like. We're not going to discuss that or go into details, but we all own that, right? We all own the change that's going to have to take place, or we're looking forward to taking place. So think about that as we go through. Okay, what is knowledge? What I did, and I'm going to look at Robert here because he sat next to me in ITIL training, and we heard about this. We talk about knowledge being data. So if you think of an Excel spreadsheet, that's one column of information. It moves on up to information, which is typically 2 columns. And you can make certain inferences, not a lot perhaps, but you have at least 2 columns of information. And then if you have 3, then it turns sometimes into knowledge. And in the ITIL training, we learned that knowledge also goes to wisdom. Okay? I heard something on the radio the other day I thought was really a great mnemonic for me and clearly explained the difference between knowledge and wisdom, and that is knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, and wisdom is knowing that you would never include it in a fruit salad. Okay? So it does kind of, okay, just because you know something doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to apply it, right? So that comes with wisdom over time. Okay? And the other thing about knowledge is we need to view knowledge as a product. And so when we think about that and we think about knowledge as a product, we need to think about quality control, right? A car coming off the line at Ford or Chevrolet, they think about quality control because that car is a product. Similarly, when we produce knowledge articles, we want quality out there, okay? Not quantity, quality. So in order to achieve that, we have a publishing process where a knowledge article is created, and it's created typically by one person or 2 people or a group of people, but often different categories of people, different groups of people use that knowledge. So we need to vet it against those different groups of people. And in order to do that, typically around knowledge management, we create what are called communities of practice. So if here's a category of knowledge, these are the people that use that knowledge. We definitely want representation from each of those groups to speak to this knowledge article. Is it, worthwhile? Maybe needs a little tweaking, not quite complete, okay? So knowledge is a product, we need to think of quality control. Similarly, in addition to publishing it, we can't just let a knowledge article be written and included in the knowledge management or knowledge base forever and ever and ever, okay? So we create review cycles. And knowledge article, each and every knowledge article, once the knowledge base is complete or it's continually growing, we have to review each of those knowledge articles at least once a year. Okay, that's a best practice around knowledge articles. And obviously, if a policy or procedure changes for the University of California, we roll down and somebody would give us a heads up, probably in that communities of practice group, and lets us know, hey, because of these changes, let's review these articles now. Let's not wait till January of next year when the changes has occurred in March. Okay? So quality control, publish and review. And we also have to think of knowledge as a service. Is this knowledge article, again, worthwhile? When people read it, are they able to take action and complete whatever it is that they've looked to this knowledge article to complete? Okay? So those are things about knowledge that you have to think about. Okay. I have certification from KMI, which is the Knowledge Management Institute. It is based out of Washington, D.C., and completely online, although they do offer in-person courses. And this is their definition of knowledge management. So obviously I'd use that one. Get the best knowledge to the right person at the right time. Okay? So when we think about that, knowledge management, it's not anything new if you think about if this is the definition. In fact, when I first started at UC Davis, we had binders throughout the facility, right? It was before the days, quite frankly, of everyone having a workstation, laptop, all that on their work table. They had binders in each of the areas. So we constantly were at the copy machine copying off 17 pieces of paper and distributed to those 17 binders around the building. That was our knowledge base. That was knowledge management at the time. Okay? And then it's grown over the years. I'm sure you folks have folders and files, etc. And that's a knowledge base as well. So nothing new with regards to the term. But let's take a look in the next couple of slides. We'll visit what is best knowledge, who are the right people, and what's the right time. So if you look at the first, with regards to best knowledge, and I'm going to use a different term. I like the term timely, but I think it's more appropriate to use the term current. It has to be current. The knowledge in your knowledge article has to be current. When people come to it, again, I'm going to use the word reliable, they need to know that you're not doing something antiquated, but rather something that's for the here and now. So knowledge, best knowledge is timely. Best knowledge, best knowledge is also accurate, and that reverts back to our having communities of practice and vetting the articles and making sure that they represent from each perspective what is true. Okay, so they need to be accurate. And then they also need to be complete. And complete kind of feeds into the next slide. They need to be complete for the question asked or the process described. And that depends on the need of the person, right? So let's talk for a minute about what is knowledge management when we consider the right person, okay? And our right person is every person who may use the knowledge base. So if you think about that, we have new or new to role people that would use a knowledge base, and they have different needs, okay? Or new to role, or new people, and people who have been in a position for many years. Maybe there's a process that's outlined that's 20 steps long, and they've just changed steps 13 through 15. So for that experienced person, they're looking just for that piece of information. Okay, if it's somebody new or new to role, they appreciate having the steps 1 through 20 and having them all in one-stop shop, one-stop knowledge article. Okay, so what's just right for the new to role person or new person is not just right perhaps for our more experienced clientele. So we need to think, again, that's with regards to the perspective, we need to think what needs to occur for both those groups of people. And if it's appropriate in this long process because we keep getting questions around these new steps or these steps in particular, then absolutely we need to pull that out and offer them in a different knowledge article, okay? So I call this the Goldilocks concept. So knowledge needs to be just right, and if everyone gets to be Goldilocks, everyone gets to decide on what's right, what's just right for them, okay? So when we create knowledge, we have to have that in mind. Questions? All right. And for us at UC Davis, we specifically had 3 types of knowledge articles. We had glossary articles, we had FAQs, very similar to what a lot of people have out on their web pages, and then we had end-to-end processes. And you could, on the end-to-end processes, we'd have 3 columns, and here's what the department was responsible for, here's what the central division was responsible for, and here's what the shared services center was responsible for. So people could clearly see, oh, this is where I take that particular ball and do these steps and then hand it off to this group of people, okay? A little different, we did not have shared service center IT up at UC Davis in the shared services center when I worked there. It was HR, payroll, and finance including travel and entertainment. So a lot of processes, okay? Okay, what is knowledge management right time? Everybody knows the answer to this. You need help, when do you want it? It's Sunday at 9 o'clock at night. When do you want help? Right now, okay? That's right, right now. It needs to be, our knowledge needs to be accessible anytime, okay, from anywhere, okay? So 24/7. Everybody always has the answer for that. I always think of Veruca Salt and Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory. She wants it now. We're all Veruca. Okay, when we think of the purpose of knowledge management for the Campus Shared Services Center, and we're thinking, here's one of the times I mentioned ServiceNow, I've created this statement: to empower our clients to self-employ the most efficient and effective processes available via knowledge management. And I do put in parentheses there, ServiceNow, because that's what we're going to be rolling out with. So again, as a pilot, so I put the word in there. Now, I have to say, when you think about your clientele, and I did part of my 23 years, 4 years of it at UC Davis was as a help desk person, IT help desk person, okay? Now, do you think knowledge articles and rolling out a wonderful knowledge base, people, your end users, are going to feel empowered? No, they're not going to feel empowered. And do you think all of them are going to self-employ the knowledge that's in the knowledge base? Come on, guys, shake heads, nod heads. No, okay? So when we talk about this, what are we talking about? We're talking about how our behavior needs to change. Oop, I did it. How our behavior needs to change and in order to change our customers' behavior, okay? And what does that look like? At Davis, I worked right next to our service desk analyst group, and there were a quad of people, and I literally would get up out of my chair and be, no, no, no. They would get a call from a client. What's the easiest thing for them to do? They just would give all the answers, right? Oh, well, first you want to do this, and then you do that, and then you do the next thing, and then and after that, you hand it off. When we had a perfectly beautifully written knowledge article outlining just those details, right? So I would get up out of my chair and I'm like this, stop. You know, this is what we need to do. We need to have things in place to change our behavior so their behavior can change, our end users. So when you pick up a phone call like that, you're going to say, well, you know what, we just populated our knowledge base and I know there's a knowledge article that addresses just that topic. Let's look for that. Let me lead you through. Okay, first you go here and then the menu and you lead, oh, I didn't know this was out here. Now, 100% of the time, again, you're not going to have people that succumb to that kind of customer service, right? Okay, again, have I done this kind of work before? Yes, I have. And they're going to say, I don't have time for that. You just need to tell me what I need to do. Okay? Am I seeing a nodding of heads? Okay, thank you. So at that, though, you might take an opportunity and think, you know, you're going to have their name and number. And so I'm going to give you this information, but I'm going to be calling back later this afternoon to show you what we can do for future, what you could do in the future. Okay? So there are things that you need to put into place or think about prior to initiating or handling knowledge in a different way. And this empowering, some people from the get-go will feel empowered, and they do want to self-employ, right? They feel comfortable and confident, and my gosh, it's written out, I can do this, etc. Okay? So there are those people. When I did this presentation for the library, there was one gentleman who stopped me at this point and said, well, it sounds like you're trying to do away with a help desk. And it's like, no, we will never do away with a help desk because we will never do away with people. Okay? And people need a help desk, you know, a person on the other end. And sometimes we understand that clients are just phoning for a sounding board or judgment. Hey, I took step 13, this happened, it's not really spelled out. So I just wanted to touch base with you. Am I even in the ballpark or what have you? And in fact, as knowledge managers, we want people to do that. Why would we want people to do that? We want them to do that because then we can make that knowledge article more robust with their feedback, correct? We can update it or change the phrase. Oh, if you didn't understand this, I'm going to put this to this communities of practice group and see if this phrase or this additional sentence would be helpful. Okay, they'll put it out to people, test it, and see what have you. But we want people to do that, okay? And the system will have a means of doing that, but we're never going to get away from the phone calls and the individual emails. So we need to be prepared for that. Okay. And you guys, if you feel empowered and self-employed, knowledge articles, you will lead by example, right? So tag, you're it on that one. Okay, guiding principles to create good knowledge. And I go through these very quickly. We kind of just discussed why we're knowledge purveyors, and here's guiding principles to create good knowledge. I'm going to cover the mission statement. Again, very quickly, we'll go through these campus operating principles, our Campus Shared Service Center operating principles, the principles of community you have here on campus, and STARS, which is a customer service training that I know is going around campus. Are you folks using that? Have you had training in STARS? Okay, so we'll just go through. So the mission statement, and this is pretty much the mission statement of each and all of the 10 UCs that run throughout the state of California, and that is to teach, support research, and do research, and public service. For those that have health centers like UC Davis, there's also patient care would be number 4. Now, this next slide, I have to say, when I finally found it, because it did take me a while, I was so excited, it gave me goosebumps, and I want you all to think about why. So here's the mission statement. I did put the link up, and here's what I found. Why might I be excited about that? Okay, knowledge. I did bold them for everybody. But in fact, if you look at the one phrase, and look at me stay inside my corral, John, it is a, let me see, knowledge, discovering new knowledge and functioning as an active working repository of organized knowledge. Okay? That's what knowledge management is. We could have used this as the definition, and it's part of our whole organization's mission statement. Charge. Okay, everybody get that? I talk about the next couple of slides. You'll see a lot of things. Again, I'm kind of wearing my HR hat. There's a lot around performance management that's clear to us as we go through these, right? This is what we're here to do, and by gosh, you're all doing it when you contribute to knowledge, okay? So here's the ETS mission and vision statement. Each time I have delivered this training, I always have researched the mission statement that I found out on the web pages, and here's the one that's unique to this group. I invite the people in the viewing audience to find your mission statement for your department or division and plug it in and see what it states around knowledge. So, and I think the last bullet is kind of your go-to point. You have a special responsibility for the dissemination of knowledge. Okay? Okay, campus operating principles. I love some of the posters I see with regards to feedback, et cetera. And we're not going to tap on each one, but if you combine the first two, it was astounding to me when I found out how the Campus Shared Service Center at UC Berkeley was populated. Okay? At Davis, there were open recruitments, so the descriptions were developed, they were advertised, and people applied for those positions, were interviewed, and got them, or didn't. Okay? At Berkeley, it's my understanding that the departments are each handpicking those who will go to the Campus Shared Services Center. Am I seeing a nodding of heads? Yes, okay. So for each department and division, if you think of these campus operating principles, that work was done together. The Campus Shared Services Center worked up the position descriptions. This is what we need. And you folks worked together and said, okay, we've got this. This is the person. Boy, it's going to be hard to lose them. But here's the person that best fits this set, okay, of job duties, responsibilities, skills, etc. Okay? And similarly, and we hope you write this up, those of you who are doing that, we are accountable to each other. You're accountable for creating or giving us the cornerstone of the Campus Shared Services Center by providing the staff. So bravo, I'm sure very hard decisions were being made. And you did what was best for the campus overall and the Campus Shared Services Center to run because we're all in this together, right? So there's it in practice, and we had it. Okay? Briefly, the principles of community. I used to do diversity trainings quite a bit on the UC Davis campus. This was a cornerstone that we would go to, and I always would ask people, you should read through that and see what resonates for you. And for me, when I think of creating a One IT or working on a very large project for the University of California at Berkeley, the statement that kind of stuck out is we respect the differences as well as the commonalities that bring us together and call for civility and respect in our personal interactions. I'm sure we're all going to have frustrating moments, but we're going to remember this about the principles of community and say we're called to a higher level of service and working together, okay? So that's something we go refer back to. Okay, and now we go to the campus operating principles. And the one I'm going to dance on here for a bit is the leverages functional expertise and institutional knowledge. Again, for me as a knowledge manager, that would resonate with creating communities of practice and people who have specialized knowledge, built knowledge over the years in areas, and we need their feedback to make sure our knowledge articles aren't good but great, really serving a group of people. Now, having said that, I will say when they do best practices around picking the people that populate the communities of practice work groups or whatever we want to call them, committees, they have found that the two things that make them most successful is one, understanding the vision, and the second thing is believing we can get there. Okay? Does that have anything to do with years of service? Not really. As a matter of fact, I call them yeah buts. We want to avoid getting yeah buts on the communities of practice. Yeah buts are people who are asked, hey, would you like to be on the communities of practice? It entails this much time and this is the person. And they're, yeah, that sounds great. But you know, we tried to do that 10 years ago and it never worked and we don't think it will work, but yeah, I'll do that. See how I say yeah and but in the same sentence? And sometimes it occurs more than once. There's a little pink/red flag raising its head there, okay? So when we get to the point of picking people to populate that, those are things we need to think about. Okay, and these are other. Sure. Oh, we're popping in with a
I
statement.
talk a lot about no but and yes and we want to be a yes and group rather than a, no, we can't do that, but da 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 da. So it would be, okay, that's interesting. Yes, that's possible, and we need to make sure we look at the following issues, etc. So that rang true to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful feedback. Okay, and then we have the CSS stars. I know Letters in Science has adopted this customer service model. We have as well at the Campus Shared Services Center. So I wanted to, again, it's good. These are all kind of ollie oxen free articles, I think, that are available and we should think about, and they should resonate, or parts of them resonate with us. So when you work with Campus Shared Service Center staff, we are all committed to providing this level and type of customer service. Okay? Now we get into a bit more of the meat around knowledge management, and I've outlined two specifics we need to build a customer or a knowledge culture on campus. And that is leading people to our knowledge base. Okay? And sometimes that's pulling people into the knowledge, and sometimes that's pushing knowledge out to people. So let me give you an example of each of those. So pulling people into knowledge is what I cited before. You know, the help desk staff, they answer the phone or they get an incoming email, and instead of just giving the answer, they say, let's look for that article together. Let me show you how to search the knowledge base for that particular article. Okay? That's pulling people into knowledge. A lot of people would feel empowered if they knew it existed, but a lot of times people don't even know it exists, okay? And particular articles, etc. Okay? So that's pulling people into knowledge. There are a lot of ways that might occur, and unique to your work department, the work that is done in your department. So again, when you have meetings, you can brainstorm around these things. Okay? And pushing knowledge out, this is the one other time I mentioned specifically ServiceNow. ServiceNow, each and every person will have a homepage unique to their job functionality. Okay? And their functionality, or independent of their functionality, everyone has what is called a newsreel. So when I took over knowledge for the Shared Service Center up at Davis, I thought that is not real estate that's not being used at all, and it's really powerful. So when we created a new article, knowledge article, or when we updated a knowledge article or created a timely knowledge article, I would put it on the newsreel. So it just popped out there for people. So let's go through what each of those is. New knowledge is fairly self-explanatory. It's a brand spanking new knowledge article. You want to advertise it per se or market it out there on your newsreel. And then there's updated articles. So the community practice get together, say, you know, these steps need to be revised. We need to rewrite them. Here's the changes. And what I would do is physically in the knowledge article highlight those all yellow and then put them on the newsreel. And, you know, so there'd be the title of the knowledge article, and the first word would be all in caps, updated, and then the title of the article. And for the new one, new in all caps. Now, timely articles are really, you really have to sit down and think about that. Timely articles, and the example I give all the time is W-2 forms. I don't know how many calls I took every December as an HR payroll person. Now, next year I want to get my W-2 form as soon as I can. When will that be? Literally 25 phone calls a day on that, even though we'd have it out on the web, etc. So what we would do at that time of year at the Campus Shared Service Center at Davis is we, again, all in caps, timely, and then there's the W-2 knowledge article. Here's the link to the web page with the explanation of what dates you can expect them, whether you get them by mail or automatically, da-da-da-da. Very complete. So it kind of, you kind of have to anticipate what are the needs. So prior to semesters, at the end of semesters, over the summer, are there different needs with regards to your knowledge, okay? And then the other thing we need to think about is how we're going to acknowledge knowledge sharing, okay? At this point, I usually ask, what does get acknowledged? What do you get attaboy and attagirls for in your department? So if you think about that, here's something else to add to that list, okay? We want, when we see somebody submitting, here's a snippet of knowledge I think would be a good thing to make a knowledge article, build a knowledge article. I'm going to pass that up the line to my supervisor, over to this colleague who's now on this communities of practice. So we need to acknowledge that. One very simple way of doing that is at your team meetings to have that as an agenda item and just make a call. What did somebody learn this week that might be applicable to creating a knowledge article? Okay, I'm not talking about, you know, the cake with horns and things, although that would be great when your knowledge base is built and deployed, etc. But, you know, the daily activities that put this at the forefront of people's minds, get people thinking about building knowledge, okay? You have to have a game plan. That's what I say. Okay, and then I go through an example just so people see what it's like, because if you haven't ever been to or used a knowledge base, and there might be some folks out there that haven't, a knowledge exchange, for example, that occurred for me now, and this was from me to the CSSIT help desk staff. I did spend about 20-25 minutes trying to seek an article that would help me with this. But back in December, I was given an iPad, and I come back to use it, you know, at my work day, and I can't turn it on. Okay, so I turned this into the IT help desk after very rigorously looking through. Let me tell you, I didn't want them to know I didn't know how to do this, right? So I looked very long and hard. And so Juan Grande, who gave me permission to use his name and what he wrote in this training, told me what he did. I performed a hard reboot. I held down the home button and power button at the same time for a couple seconds. Okay, great. I wasn't even there. It was like elves came right to my workstation. I came back, it was on, it was working. Wow, great customer service. Juan did a great job. Here was my response to Juan. Okay, thanks Juan, and I'll try that if there's a next time. I just Googled iPad home key. Okay, what did I tell you right there as your customer? You told me to hold down the home key. I don't even know what that is. So I'm telling you, I'm communicating back to you. If there's a next time, I just Googled iPad home key to confirm what I was thinking was the home key actually was. Okay? So if I'm Juan, I'm taking that ball and running with it and creating a knowledge article, right? Because how many people did this exchange help? One. Okay? So let's see in the future, if we had a knowledge article, and I made stuff up here, people. I didn't go high tech. I have an iPad, so here's the question. I have an iPad that's not booting up. What do I do? And so then you have recommendations. We recommend you try the following troubleshooting in this order. And I made these things up, hard, medium, soft. Okay? So in a knowledge article, how many people would this help? Yeah, infinity and beyond. So you never know how many people will help. Actually, when you have a ServiceNow product, we will be able to keep metrics on stuff like that, how many times a particular knowledge article is used. So we will be able to track that. And let's say you're somebody who, I didn't do it right or what have you. I tried these 3 things. We still have this tag at the bottom. Hey, after you've tried these, your iPad still's not working, here's our contact information. And you can choose. You can either phone us or you can send us an email. Great customer service, right? Can help a multitude of people. Now the next one, and when I've presented this before, I have to say, this gets people all riled up. It's very exciting for folks because I think they see the big potential of knowledge. And with it, knowledge exchange, I'm saying 3 months from now, but as you build your knowledge, of course, you're going to start with what you got. But when you think about it, you might want to create packaged or bundled knowledge. Okay, so what would that look like? It's something that anticipates user need. So we'll use the iPad and my question as an example. I have a new iPad, or an iPad. It's new to me, the iPad's new, never used it before. I honestly didn't know why they were giving it to me, but I was very happy to get it and have used it. But imagine if upon receipt of that iPad, it had a top notice, welcome to being a new iPad user. Here are 5 knowledge articles, and here's the link to get to them. Happy trails, have a good time with your iPad, okay? What does that do? Well, for me, if I were to receive that, and I always think I'm pretty average, I would think, wow, they're setting an expectation for me. Right? I probably should go in if I'm going to have trouble with this, and it might come in the form of an email, right? Your iPad should be due in the office this Thursday. Here are some articles we'd like you to bookmark or information we'd like you to know where it lives in case you need it in the near future or far off future. That sets an expectation on me as an iPad user. I better know and be able to figure out how to reboot it. And look at this wonderful article with pictures, and I know which the home key and the power key, and I really feel comfortable and confident doing that. And what happens to your workload around new iPad users? It reduces the workload, okay? So, pretty good stuff. So these last 2 slides actually could be combined together, and I will at some point. But things to work that you can go out of this room right now and work on are identify ways your team will lead people to our knowledge. Okay? You currently have knowledge, don't know what it looks like, but instead of just answering people's questions or sending an email that answers them, you might try educating them on here's our link, or prepare for the future when you are brought into the test pilot for ServiceNow. Okay? Identify, and this is really helpful, identify your most often used and liked knowledge articles. Okay? Very simple thing. As a supervisor or manager, do I have supervisors and managers in the room? Okay, very good. How will I acknowledge knowledge sharing? Okay. one thing I always like to stop and say at this point, we have, as in our native language of English, the term know-it-all or phrase know-it-all, and that does not have good connotation, right? Okay, so we all want to become share-it-alls, right? We don't want to just sit here and be know-it-alls and hoard knowledge. We want to share that out for people. Okay. And also, there are next steps to preparing your knowledge base. You want to review, when you go and look through all your knowledge articles, you want to review those and look for the timeliness or how current they are. Are they accurate? Are they complete? Is there embedded knowledge? Remember, I gave the example of the end-to-end process that's 20 steps long. Are steps 5 to 7, do they warrant being bumped out? You know, obviously still include them in the end-to-end process, but do they warrant having a separate knowledge article created around them? So these are things to think about. And then think about what categories of knowledge that you have. And that's an easy way to organize. And we live knowledgeably ever after. So are there any questions? Yes?
I'm curious, so we have the capability to do videos here. Would an article would it be useful to have videos included in the articles, or is that something that you think should be like linked to separately? Or because you know, I've had, for example, in design engineering, we have all these touch panels that we've put into the classrooms, and I thought it would be useful to have instructional videos because, you know, sometimes it's they can be daunting, and I thought that might be more useful to have a video on how to use it than to have this long article. What are your thoughts on that?
I believe in the saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and a video is a picture. Now, depending on the tool and how the tool can do that, we have limitations. I'm not here able to speak about all the tool has to offer, the ServiceNow tool. But I do know that there is a button for videos to be included. So when I say step 1, 2 through 20, some of those might be screenshots or videos. Absolutely. Yes?
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, thanks for your presentation. I was curious if you could comment on, leveraging existing knowledge bases. For instance, your example on the iPad, like why not send them to Apple, for instance, where there's extensive help articles around that. I mean, at Berkeley, too, a lot of people bring in their own devices a lot. So while one iPad article that we might write might help a current user, if somebody has an older model, for instance, it may not be applicable. So having something that appeals to a wider variety might be useful sometimes. So, but I'm wondering, at what point do you make that decision to go outside versus local?
Well, I can speak to, I don't know if any of you have ever used the Wisconsin knowledge base. Show of hands, Wisconsin knowledge base. Okay, a sprinkling. I saw like 4, 5. There were, past tense, 436 articles populating Wisconsin knowledge base. And a lot of those, and it's been the task of myself and one other person, along with a team of internal to CSSIT, to go through those and have a rest in peace with regards to Wisconsin knowledge base and creation. That's what we're populating our first round of knowledge articles in ServiceNow. And many of them have links to Google's, help desk or knowledge articles or what have you, if applicable. And it goes through the different permutations of if you have OS blankety blank, here we go, here we go, here we go. So I think that's being addressed. I think it needs to be. With the knowledge articles, the thing you'll have to be cognizant of then is when you create the question where you've provided the answer, you want to be certain to say for models, like in your iPad model example, for iPad models blankety blank. Did I answer your question? It was.
I guess I was just wondering if there was a norm. Oh, sorry. Thank you. I guess I was just wondering if there's sort of a norm to leverage, for instance, a vendor's knowledge base whenever possible versus, rewriting things locally.
Yeah, we're not into rewriting what's already been out there, so we have the links to it, but we also, a lot of the articles have, I would call it precursor information, like before you begin And I'm not an IT person, but it'll refer to Air Bears 2 and some people on campus Thunderbird versus all these different, and they'll include that prior to, and here's what you do with Google, et cetera, et cetera. So
there are a couple of other things, which is you can actually purchase from various vendors prepackaged K-base information that you can bring into your K-base. So for example, when I was at NYU, we looked at whether or not we wanted to bring in, before we shut down Blackboard, whether we wanted to bring in a vendor's sort of prepackaged Blackboard information that we could suck into our knowledge base and then alter as we needed. So that sort of gets to your issue. I know what you're saying, but the question, Microsoft Word, for example,
right.
A lot of really standard packages, you can actually purchase information that will begin to populate your knowledge base so that you can build on that.
And I think even with reviewing the 436, but who was counting articles that were populating or moving over from Wisconsin, we found that some, you can get metrics on them. If they're not being used and, the precursor comments are, this is becoming a dinosaur. They don't say it like that, but this is becoming old, but here's how you do that. As less and less people use that, you can retire the articles and move, you wouldn't even move new. You'd always be adding the new stuff, so. Yes?
You've mentioned ServiceNow a couple of times. Is that, and you also were careful to have a caveat saying you're not talking about systems. I understand that, but is there a decision that we're using ServiceNow?
The CSSIT is charged to run a pilot using ServiceNow for its knowledge base.
Do you happen to know whether there is incorporated into that an expiration date kind of field for a given knowledge base article? Like I've always been curious about being able to say in advance, I think this knowledge should last 18 months.
Okay, one of the slides I have is talking about knowledge as a product and how it should be reviewed at least once every 12 months, so annually, and all the knowledge articles at the UC Davis knowledge base were once a year. That's a best practice. So at least. And as policies and things change, then we get feedback and update as needed.
Hi, a big question I have is how to get a knowledge base in front of students. There's a huge information gap that, or lack of sort of centralization of certain pieces of data on campus, and I'm just wondering if the campuses, or if your experience at Davis, if that's one thing they try to address with student.
We did actually have some articles directed towards students. I know as long as you have your authentication and correct, again, not IT, and not ServiceNow rep. But as long as you can authenticate, you can have access to the knowledge base. So if I'm a student, if I'm a student user of an iPad and we had a knowledge article or knowledge articles around that, I could get that there and understand
Bernie, there's
that.
also a way, depending, and I was going to actually ask this question too, especially because we deal mainly with faculty and students and
Okay.
end users. So we're not, and we are both tier 1 and tier 2, and often tier 3 in the way we function in terms of addressing incidents and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I think what many of us will be interested in is how, when you talked about pushing knowledge to people, and your example was actually at the service desk itself.
Right.
For us, our interest is how do we push knowledge to students and to faculty, and how do we embed knowledge within context of where they are? So, I'll give you a few examples. So, for example, a student is in one of our applications. And what we want, and they are using our application, but they are looking at their own financial aid data. And what we really want to be able to do is embed in the application in some way a link to the appropriate knowledge base articles that might answer their questions about their bill. Or we may want in our rooms where we actually have the AMX panels, and if they're really, really cool, we actually may want to even embed a knowledge base article. I'm going out on a limb here, guys. To that knowledge base article with the video to show me how to use the damn thing because I can't figure it out. So for what we're, I think, interested in is how do we actually distribute and put the knowledge in context. So rather than driving everybody to the single portal with the one Google search box that I think works well for many places.
Right.
How do we embed the knowledge within context so that we know we're providing the just-in-time answers to our users from wherever they are within our applications or within our spaces?
I think that's a great question. I think it's for, I'll go ahead and say, greater minds than myself. Where you, well, no, where you, because I don't even know when you're talking about systems and embedding, so just in time, I love just in time. So that whole concept, hello, so that whole concept just very much speaks to me, but I don't know the ins and outs of even what we're talking, you know what I'm saying? The systems and stuff.
And
But,
I do think there are ways, I'm sorry, and just because I came from a campus that used ServiceNow, sorry guys, there are ways to do that. So you can take
Right.
a link from a knowledge base article and you can embed it in an application. Or you can also, those packages of knowledge that you're talking about,
Right, bundling
you can
it.
also dress them up really prettily and get a feed of those in your own website. So we're a little more technical. So there are ways to do that. So that you're not just driving people to the Uber, knowledge base that, but that scares people sometimes or takes them out of the
Right.
context of what they're doing, which is not what we want to do. We want to provide them with the information within the context that we're providing there. But it benefits from the fact that it gets updated all regularly and all of that kind of stuff. So it's like a database, basically.
and now I'm going to put one other caveat. I don't know if that's how it came out the box. ServiceNow came like that and was able to do that? Okay. So, yeah. 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 So that when I talk about, during meetings, putting knowledge on the agenda, these are the exact kind of conversations, not just about articles and acknowledging knowledge, but how do we use it and what would that look like? Because that's my one caveat would be, I don't know if out of the box ServiceNow can do this array of things, but if it's something you want, then go for it. Yes, Robert.
So, as the consumer of knowledge-based article, I found that it can be challenged to look at disorganized information in the article. And I know, like you mentioned about categorizing the information. At CSS, do you recommend any like template or best practices, or how do you lay out the information to have that consistency and easy to find?
Okay. Typically, it seems that we're using FAQs. That is the bulk. And again, we're starting by just rolling out Wisconsin, converting the Wisconsin knowledge base articles to ServiceNow. And so those have all been reviewed. And I'd say 100% of those are, here's a frequently asked question or a question, and here's the response. The first line is typically, something, a unique fact about what you're about to read, and then it starts into the process. A lot of these are just simple processes that, again, there were 437 to review, so we wanted to get that cleaned up before our next round. So we're going to be, but we have categories, network, desktop software, desktop hardware, and when you look at your ServiceNow knowledge base page, you can see those all have headings. So you can view all the knowledge articles around that one particular category on one screen, or if there's enough to go.
Actually, the reason I'm asking is my team is start building the knowledge article right now for my
great.
project. And I'm just curious if we can leverage the layout or the organization that you have, so that when we get to that point, we don't have to rework, all the information that we have.
Right. So, I can send you what we've used. When you're talking about a formal template, it's kind of hard because I don't know what your knowledge looks like, is what I'm saying, I guess. If there are questions, I can show you typically how we've handled them. And if they're more process-driven things, I can, give you samples of that. I'm
just curious to see the sample and see
Okay,
how
great.
it would fit with my project.
Okay, I don't know.
For maybe two more questions.
Two more questions.
And then Alex.
Okay.
I was just going to speak to what he was asking. I was curious if there's a usefulness to having a knowledge base editor that and a style guide. That way, because what he's saying is right. If we have a bunch of people writing articles, they're all going to have different language and styles, and it would be useful to have an editor to just kind of normalize everything and a style guide to follow. And I don't know if that's something that you've seen or dealt with.
Have seen, have dealt with it. I can absolutely forward what I've seen and dealt with, and I'll talk about something else later.
And that sort of normalization, I'll just talk from the perspective of our organizational structure, might be something that would happen within the service desk. Because oftentimes they see the knowledge articles and they live in the knowledge articles, so they can get a sense for how normalized they are across the board and can play that function at some level in terms of just kind of maintaining knowledge on an ongoing basis. One more question, anybody? Kevin?
So continuing on from that discussion, can you talk a little bit about the process of knowledge management? So, in your example, say the person that helped you with the iPad, he wants to create a knowledge article. What does that process look like? Does he just go ahead and create it, and then someone reviews it, and then what does that look like if the reviewer doesn't like it? Does it bounce back? And at what point does it become knowledge? And then talk about when the year review comes up, then what happens, and who decides that it's still accurate or not, and what all of that process of that knowledge management looks like.
So with ServiceNow in this particular, the example I gave, that would have come in as an incident, okay, because I'm reporting a problem. Something's not working for me, okay? And so then if I'm Juan, I get it, and I can say, press the button, I'm going to add a little before and after to do my best attempt at making this a knowledge article, and then submit it. And just like I'm talking about communities of practice, here's something about desktop hardware. So I'm going to have our desktop hardware people review this, give the stamp of approval. Maybe there's an article that already existed and one didn't know about it, or what have you. So there's a review process, there's a vetting process, and then there's, yes, this is good to go.
Can you talk a little bit about time frame?
Can you talk about time frame?
Well, currently at Berkeley, no, I can't, because... Okay, in my experience at Davis, with regards to the different categories, and again, it was HR and what have you, typically what would happen is policy would change prior to, I'll go ahead and say, prior to the review cycle. So there'd be the 5 people, let's say, that would review that particular category of information. They'd all need to vet it. With regards to a review cycle, I'd give 3 to 4 weeks. Now, certain times of the year, that doesn't work. And you probably have the same certain times of the year, although you guys are on semester and start in August. For us, August and July were kind of dicey. Everybody wants to do things those months, but because of the vacations that occur, that was hard for us to get our leaders and the people that would vet it and approve it together. So those are all things that you take into consideration, and one community, what works well for one community of practice won't work for this community of practice. So it's case by case.
So I just want to take a second to thank the events team, Milana and John and Airdrie, for helping to record this and make it available for folks after the fact.
Yeah.
And a huge thank you to you, Paula.
Oh.
This has been super informative, and I really appreciate you subjecting yourself to the lights and the camera and
And the
to
heat.
ETS.
Thank you.